Thomas Allen Malm, and I want to talk to you a little bit about the United States Postal Service from my...
We will begin the hearing in just a moment when they tell me they are ready to begin the live stream.
Chair Maloney.
Yes.
Point of order, you mentioned the mask. You don't have one on.
Well, I'm talking. If you're talking, you can have your mask off.
Oh, I thought you said during questions you had to have it on.
Well, to come in the room, you have to have the mask on. But as you talk, as you and I know, it's very hard to talk with the mask on. So it can be removed when you're asking questions.
Thousands of restaurants, the thousands of live music venues, the thousands of hotels, the thousands of barbershops across the country that are struggling to survive. Is anything in this hearing going to discuss any of that, to the best of your knowledge?
No, sir.
Are you aware of this Democratic Congress pulling up any legislation to deal with these issues this month, rather than going home, but yet calling Congress back on Saturday to have a hearing, or I'm sorry, have a vote before we even had a hearing on Saturday? Are you aware of that, or is this the only thing that we've been voting on in August?
I haven't been following the agenda of Congress.
Mr. DeJoy, thank you for being with us today. What is the cost of a first-class postage stamp?
55 cents.
Just wanted to check. What about to mail a postcard?
I don't know, ma'am.
You don't know the cost to mail a postcard?
I don't.
What if I want to mail you said 55 cents for a first-class stamp, but what if it's like one of those greeting cards that's a square envelope? Then what is the postage?
I'll submit that I know very little about a postage stamp.
And what is the weight limit? You are more in the shipping logistics business. What's the weight limit for priority mail?
As I look at how we talk to each other in Congress, I see that we're not going to go anywhere. I tell the story about a bird that a cardinal that used to live behind my house when I lived in South Carolina. I had this beautiful sunroom in the back of the house, and there was this cardinal that used to sit up in the tree every day, and when the sun would come up, he would see his reflection in the glass on the sunroom, and he would 6, 8, 10 times a day, he would see his reflection, consider it a threat, and come flying talons first into the glass over and over and over again, without really recognizing that it was himself, just the perfect opposite, reflecting back at him. And that's, to me, a great description of what we see in Congress.
I have already intimated to you the danger of parties in the state, with particular reference to the founding of them on geographical discriminations. Let me now take a more comprehensive view, and warn you in the most solemn manner against the baneful effects of the spirit of party generally. This spirit, unfortunately, is inseparable from our nature, having its root in the strongest passions of the human mind. It exists under different shapes in all governments, more or less stifled, controlled, or oppressed, but, in those of the popular form, it is seen in its greatest rankness, and is truly their worst enemy. The alternate domination of one faction over another, sharpened by the spirit of revenge, natural to party dissension, which in different ages and countries has perpetrated the most horrid enormities, is itself a frightful despotism. But this leads at length to a more formal and permanent despotism. The disorders and miseries which result gradually incline the minds of men to seek security and repose in the absolute power of an individual, and sooner or later the chief of some prevailing faction, more able or more fortunate than his competitors, turns this disposition to the purposes of his own elevation, on the ruins of public liberty. Without looking forward to an extremity of this kind, which nevertheless ought not to be entirely out of sight, the common and continual mischiefs of the spirit of party are sufficient to make it the interest and duty of a wise people to discourage and restrain it. It serves always to distract the public councils and enfeeble the public administration. It agitates the community with ill-founded jealousies and false alarms, kindles the animosity of one part against another, foments occasionally riot and insurrection.
From the Postal Service Union, from the American Postal Workers Union, as its leader, I want to have conversations about that sort of thing so that our communities can be stronger. Now, when I lived in South Carolina, I had the same attitude, and in a nonpartisan election in my town, I influenced the outcome through the same kinds of conversations that I hope we can have about the Postal Service and about America in general. And the outcome of the conversations that I started, actually, I was told by a kid who played hockey for me and was going to college that his political science teacher told him that it was the first time in history in South Carolina that every incumbent on the ballot was defeated. And we can talk about how we can control our communities from, who our governors are, who our mayors are, who our dog catchers are, and who sits in the House of Representatives in Washington for us, so that they will represent a different kind of conversation and one that actually represents the spirit and soul of our community. I mean, my bird, he used to fly in the glass doing the same thing over and over and over again. We still go back in the voting booth and we still elect the same people over and over and over again. Now, I can explain why my bird flies into the glass all day long, because he's got a bird brain. I don't know why we do it as people. Anyway, I'm Thomas Malm, and I hope we can have this conversation going forward.